Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Sadatmadhyana Niratam Vishayebhyav Parang Mukham Naumi Shastreshu Nishnatam Chandrashekhara Bharatim Om. Page number 11, verse 14. Adhikarinam ashaste phalasiddhir visheshatah upaya deshakaladhyaha santyasyaam sahakarinah. So in this verse, we had looked at in the last couple of classes, Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada is saying that the main determinant of success in any venture is the qualifications that are present in the candidate, especially so in the case of Jnanam. And therefore, the difference in the outcomes, that some people are successful in attaining Jnanam, whereas others are not, even when the circumstances that they have are the same, is because of those qualifications. In the case of Jnanam, that is the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. There are other incidental factors such as location, time, the kind of guru that one has, which are all supporting factors. But the main determinant of success and failure is the adhikari itself. Now, in the last session, we had looked at the commentary by Jagadguru Srimad Chandrashekhara Bharati Mahaswamigal in the middle of page 11. The sentence that we had last read was Athapi Ashuddha Chitto Rakshasarajo Virochanah Brahmalokam Gatopi Paramaguruna Parameshthina Upadishtopi Naivagrahidatmanam. This was a story from the Chandogya Upanishad, wherein the king of the Devatas, Indra, and the king of the Rakshasas, Virochana, both approach Chaturbhuka Brahma, Prajapati, in Brahmaloka and request him to teach them about the self, to confer upon them Brahmajnana. So, both of them have the best of circumstances in the sense that they have the best of the teachers, the highest jiva in creation, Hiranyagarbha Brahma himself, as their teacher. And the circumstances are also very conducive in the sense that the teaching is taking place in Brahmaloka. Both of them have gone through the same spiritual disciplines and they have done the Brahmacharya vow. They have undertaken that in the presence of Brahmaji himself. Despite that, Indra attains Brahmajnanam, whereas Virochana does not. And Jagadguru Srimad Chandrashekhara Bharati Mahaswamigal is saying the reason for that is because the king of the Rakshasas, the Rakshasa Raja Virochana, is Ashuddha Chittaha. His mind is impure, meaning he does not have the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti that Indra has. Continuing, samsarameva nissaram drishtva sara didrikshaya pravrajantya akrutodvahaha param vairagyamashtritaha. Iti यदि वेतरथा ब्रह्मचर्यादेव प्रव्रजेत गृहाद्वा वनाद्वा यद अहरेह विरजेत तद अहरेव प्रव्रजेत इत्यादि प्रमाणैः वक्ष्यमाण वैराग्यादि साधन चतुष्टय संपन्नस्य देशकालौ न विवक्षितौ इत्यभिप्रायेण तयोः सहकारित्वम् उक्तम्. Here, Acharya is quoting two scriptures. Firstly, he's saying that there is a very famous quotation that those who want to see the true essence of samsara, who have that desire, they decide that the samsara that is apparent actually has no essence, but there is an underlying reality behind samsara which is not apparent. So, what is apparent is Nissaram, but there is a Saram upon which this entire projection is taking place. And with a desire to see that, there are some wise people who, having taken recourse to the highest renunciation, param vairagyam ashritaha, pravrajanti akritodvaha, they give up on marriage, they give up on the householder's life, and then they take up to sannyasa ashrama. Similarly, the Jabalopanishad, which was quoted by the Purvapakshi a couple of lines above, he had said, Brahmacharyam samapya grihi bhavet, grihad vani bhutva pravrajet. So that Jabalopanishad mantra is saying that one has to take up sannyasa ashrama after having gone through brahmacharya, grihasthashrama, vanasprastha in that order. Brahmacharyam samapya grihi bhavet. So one moves to householder's status after brahmacharya ashrama. From the householder status, grihad vani bhavet, he takes up to vanaprastha vani bhutva pravrajet. From the vanaprastha you have to take up sannyasa ashrama. It seems to indicate an order. But the very same mantra in the very same Upanishad continues Yadi Vetharatha Brahmacharyadeva Pravrajet Grihadva Vanadva. It says, if the desire for renunciation is very strong, then immediately upon Brahmacharya Ashrama, the completion of Brahmacharya Ashrama, one can immediately renounce and take up Sannyasa Ashrama. Or if one is in a householder status, he can take up sannyasa ashrama, grihadva. Or if one is in vanaprastha ashrama, one can take up sannyasa ashrama. There is no hard and fast rule that in order to take up the fourth ashrama, the turiya ashrama of sannyasa, one must have gone through the previous three steps in an order. There is no such requirement. From the very first ashrama itself, one can jump. If the desire for renunciation is very strong. So, what Acharya is saying, ityadi pramanaihi bhakshyamana vairagyadi sadhana chatushtaya sampannasya deshakalau na vivakshitau. He's saying these pramanas, these means of knowledge reveal to us that what for the adhikari who is endowed with the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, being viveka, vairagya, shamadhi and mumukshutvam, for such a person, deshakalau na vivakshitau, there is no requirement that they have to take up that sannyasa ashrama or attain that jnana at a particular time and a particular place. It is only meant for those people who do not have that same level of sadhana chatushtaya sampatti as this individual. Whereas these individuals are very, very mature students whose mindset permits them to take up sannyasa and attain jnana at an instant without having to go through the long trials and tribulations that others have to go to. And therefore, he continues, Deshakalau na vivakshitau ityabhiprayena tayo sahakaritvam muktam. Therefore, with such an abhipraya, with such an intention, Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada in this verse has used the word Deshakaladhyaha Santyasyam Sahakarinaha. Time or location are merely supporting factors, they are not the central factors. Tayoho Sahakaritvam Muktam. Continuing, Ata eva Vidvan Sanyasta Bahyartha Sukhasprihas San iti Viveka Vairagye Brahmatmanavasthana Rakshana Moksha Sakshad Hetubhuta Samyak Darshana Nishtartham Moksha Sadhanopadeshaka Gurupasadana Purassara Tad Upadishtartha Manas Samadhane Hetu Krite. Now, a few verses before, In the Vivekachudamani itself, Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada had said, Vidvan Sanyasta Bahyartha Sukhasprahasan. The wise person renounces the desires for external happiness, happiness that is gained through Vishaya Sukham, through Vishaya. So he renounces such a desire, and with that, with those words, what is the intent? Acharya is saying that through the attainment of Viveka and Vairagya, Viveka being the discerning, discriminating intellect, which is able to clearly differentiate between what is real and what is unreal, differentiate between what is the self and what is not the self. And Vairagya refers to a renunciation, a dispassion, a lack of interest in worldly things. And through the attainment of Viveka and Vairagya, one attains a equanimity of the mind, because the disturbance of the mind is because of a lack of Viveka and a lack of Vairagya. Why is the mind agitated? Because of two things. The mind considers external objects to be the source of joy, and it considers those external objects to be real and such a joy to be real. So, the desire for that joy from external objects indicates that vairagya is absent, and the inability to understand that such a joy is merely ephemeral, and that the objects that one considers to be external are ultimately non existent. That knowledge is not there. And so that indicates the lack of Viveka. So a mental agitation is because of a lack of Viveka and a lack of Vairagya. And what is the opposite corollary? The presence of Viveka and Vairagya confers upon the mind the equanimity, the focus that is necessary to attain jnana. And with such a mind which is calm, focused, and is able to do the deep Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam that is required for jnana, with such a mind one is able to attain that jnana. And therefore he says that the cause for moksha is samyak darshana nishtha, or the abidance in that, in the right knowledge of oneself. And by the practice of that abidance, one ultimately takes up or claims the status of Brahma, and consistently and naturally abiding in that status of Brahma, Brahmatmanavasthana Lakshana Moksha is the nature of moksha. So therefore, the sadhana that one performs becomes the natural state itself. So once one is in the advanced stages of Jnana Marga, one invokes the Aham Brahmasmi knowledge. One invokes that knowledge and abides in that knowledge. And once one has attained moksha, the mind naturally rests in that knowledge. There is no effort required for it. And so what is the locus of that knowledge? The locus of knowledge is the mind. And therefore, having a mind which has that equanimity is very, very important. And that's what he's saying. Viveka Vairagye Brahmatmanavasthana Lakshana Moksha Sakshad Hetu Bhuta Samyak Darshana Nishthartham. In order to attain the Samyak Darshana Nishtha, which is the direct means for the moksha, whose nature is the natural abidance in the identity of the self as Brahman, the natural presence of the knowledge that Aham Brahmasmi. Just like one mistakenly considers oneself to be a human being. Does one have to wake up every morning and remind oneself to be a human being? No. One automatically assumes that when one wakes up. Similarly, in the case of a jnani who has attained that moksha, he naturally abides in the knowledge that he is Brahman. And therefore, to commence upon the Samyak Darshana Nishtha, one needs to have the Samyak Darshana, the Jnana. And how to attain the Jnana? He says, Moksha Sadhanopadeshaka Gurupasadana Purassara Tad Upadishtartha Manassamadhane Hetu Krite. That is, one approaches a Guru, gets the Upadesha, which is the sadhana for the moksha. He gets the teaching of that identity. And once one has received that teaching, one assimilates the teaching, having that mind in which equanimity is present, in which calmness is present. So, therefore, the mind is relaxed and focused. The problem that we have today is that the mind is scattered, not focused, and agitated. And therefore, to attain the state of mind that is required in order to assimilate the teaching that the Guru has given us, one needs to have Viveka and Vairagya. And that is what is being indicated. That Viveka and Vairagya are the causes for the equanimity of the mind, which is necessary to assimilate the teaching which has been given by the Guru, so that one has Samyak Jnana. And once one has got Samyak Jnana, or that knowledge of the identity, one abides in that Samyak Jnana, or a state of Samyak Jnana, Samyak Darshana Nishtha or Samyak Jnana Nishtha, as a result of which one attains moksha. So that is the sequence. Continuing, Etadrisha Manassamadhanasya Shamadamoparathi Titiksha Shraddhanam Abhave Asambhavat Muktiichabhave Tadartham Prayatna Asambhavacha Ato Vimuktयै Ityadya Shloke Viveka Vairagya Shamadhi Shatka Mumukshutvanam Jigyasa Sadharana Hetunam Suchanam Kritameva. That mental equanimity Etadrisha Manassamadhanasya Shamadamoparathi Titiksha Shraddhanam Abhave Asambhavat. He says the mental equanimity that we are talking about is not possible if one does not have the Shamadhi Shatkam. So the Shamadhi Shatkam comprise 6 characteristics of the mind. Shama being control of the mind, Dama being control of the senses, Uparati being sannyasa or renunciation, a reduction of activities, Titiksha being forbearance, Shraddha being faith. So, out of the 6 factors, 5 factors have been mentioned. The 6th factor is Samadhana, or the equanimity that we're talking about. So, what Acharya is saying, in order to attain that mental steadiness, mental equanimity, one needs to have attained all the other 5 factors beforehand, being Shama, Dama, Uparati, Titiksha, Shraddha, etc. So, without all those things, one will not have a steady mind. And if you don't have a steady mind, that is, if you do not have the desire for mukti or liberation, then there will be no effort involved or effort exercised towards attaining that liberation. And without putting that effort, that liberation will also not attain. And therefore, he says in the shloka, Ato Vimuktyai Prayateta Vidvan Sanyasta Bahyartha Sukasprahasan, in the Vivekachudamani, the previous shloka that we were referring to, what it is saying is that the causes of jnanam in general is a desire for that jnanam. So jigyasa, the cause of that jigyasa is a sense of mumukshutvam or a yearning for liberation. The cause of mumukshutvam is the shamadhi shatkam, is the shama, dama, uparati, titiksha, shraddha, which then leads to samadhanam. The cause of that shamadhi shatkam being present is viveka and vairagya. The sense of dispassion being vairagya, and the intellect to discern between the self and the non-self being viveka. Thus, what Acharya here is saying is that to attain jnana, one needs to have all these factors, and there is a logical connection between these factors, and that has been indicated already, he says. तथा तरति शोकम आत्मवित् तद विज्ञानार्थम स गुरुमेवाभिगच्छेत् इत्यादि श्रुत्यनुसारेण शोक शब्दित बंधनाशकम सम्यक ज्ञानम सद्गुरूपदिष्टार्थ विचारमंतरा न केनापि साधनांतरेण इति. So here he is saying the Chandogya mantra Tarati Shokam Atmavit, the knower of the self transcends sorrow, crosses the ocean of sorrow. Tad Vijnanartham sa Gurumeva Bigachet. In order to know that, one certainly needs to approach a guru. This is from the Mundakopanishad. From these Shrutis, what we gather is that shoka or sorrow, essentially here sorrow means bandham or bondage. Shoka shabdita bandham. And the destroyer of that bandham, destroyer of that bondage, destroyer of shoka is samyak jnanam, or the correct knowledge of oneself. And that correct knowledge of oneself, Sadguru Upadishtartha Vicharamantara na kenapi sadhanantarena iti. There is no other sadhana or means to attain that correct knowledge of oneself apart from a Sadguru giving us the Upadesha for that and following a process of self-enquiry on the basis of what the Sadguru has taught us. Therefore, what is being said is that one necessarily needs to approach a guru and one necessarily needs to do vichara, and that success in that vichara is largely down to the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti of the adhikari. And then he concludes shloke asyam ityasya siddhau ityartha. So here the word asyam means in order to attain moksha, desha and kala, time and space serve as sahakarinaha or supporting factors. With that, the commentary to verse 14 has been completed, and we will take up the commentary to verse 15 in the next session. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.